Hello and welcome everyone here to Tech Tuesdays on Northwest Digital News and SMB Nation. Seated left to right on your screen, Harry Brelsford, Tim Sutinen, Kevin Hunter, and Kyle Torgerson. And we'll have Joshua Liberman joining us here in just a moment as well to talk about securing your SMB client networks. Well, Harry, let's kick this off with talking about the event that you're at, Channel Pro event down in Long Beach, California. What's going on there?
Yeah. So Channel Pro SMB Forum is an event that's held 4 times a year across the U.S. This is the final event for the year, so they're kind of a spring and fall format. Apparently next year they're going to go to 5 events, and so what this is it's a one-day event where and so you might imagine with 4 events they hit every corner of the country, right? So the up in Boston and now all the way down here in the Long Beach area in Southern California. So what it is it's a one-day confab bringing together managed services providers and channel partners and resellers for business speak. So the lectures that they're having in the room next to me over to my side would be how to make money. For example, they might be discussing recurring revenue contracts and how to increase your margin and so on. Channel Pro is a publisher actually based out of the Boston area. Trying to see if that's showing up on the screen. Okay, they do a monthly publication that covers the reseller market, and this show is their 8th year of shows. And what I like about the Channel Pro shows is, well, first of all, they have a hot buffet at lunch. Okay, so let's just start with the important things. And they don't have the box lunches. They're known for their food. And then they have a short lecture format. So the speakers will talk in 15-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute chunks. What you won't see at Channel Pro is you're not going to see the 90-minute lecture. And there's a reason for that, gentlemen, that the long format tends to work when we're talking about other topics we've covered on this show, like AWS and Azure and developer topics where you need 90 minutes to get your head into it. Here, these are quick hitters on how to make money. And then, I would offer, if I had to guess, there's 100 attendees. That's pretty typical for a Channel Pro show. And then maybe 25 sponsors. And that's what it is. It's a handsome format. I was surprised that today they held the show on November 6th, Election Day, being a publisher and having put on events. There's a couple dates you always want to avoid, like Father's Day and Mother's Day, and God bless them for putting on a show on Election Day, man. They're braver than me. But Kevin, you may recall Channel Pro in Long Beach here, Channel Pro SMB. What was it, about 2-3 months ago? We did a show where I named 5 or 6 shows you should go to this fall.
Correct.
And we're starting to come around the corner. We're coming full circle on that. Last week, you'll recall, I was at Ingram Micro in Washington, D.C. Now I'm in Southern California at Channel Pro. So, the next thing we're going to be giving the turkey the hot foot. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be time to be time to celebrate the holidays. And then it starts all over again in January. Joshua, again, is just wrapping up a speech, and he'll be joining us on some important security topics. But, I guess what I was trying to do was just connect the dots that here we are on Election Day, and we are not specifically here to talk about election-related security, but it is funny how if you had a word cloud, you've seen those things where there's words based on popularity.
Right.
If you were to track the Twitter word cloud right now, security is a trending topic. Now, security in the context of elections, and again, we're talking more about technology security, but it is top of mind, as they say right now.
Without any question. I'm kind of curious. Tim Sutinen is sitting at the table here with us today and works with a lot of networking clients. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are with regard to security, Tim.
It's the most important thing right now when it comes to networks. There are so many bad things happening, and us MSPs are the ones who take care of it or are in the front lines of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Tim, I don't know if you had a chance to peek at Joshua's deck. We're gonna cherry pick a couple of topics, but Joshua wakes up technical. So he gets up in the morning thinking from a technical point of view. And then he also is bilingual, as I like to say, because he's also realizes the importance of revenue and making money. I think you resemble that. The interaction I've had with you
Mm-hmm.
would suggest that. As I recall, well, let me ask you. I mean, do you go to some of the industry conferences? Because let me preface that. A lot of people here, the vendors, are already on their way to the airport as we speak. You see some in the background packing up. They have to fly as fast as they can to Orlando, Florida for one of our large industry events. I'm not covering, but it's called IT Nation. So you're probably familiar with some of the big events, IT Nation for ConnectWise. Does that ring a bell?
It does. I've gone to a lot of these. Tech Data is the primary distributor we use. So Tech Data and Microsoft then put out a lot of events together about Azure, about security, about Office 365. Same with D&H, as well as then the independents like in Vegas. There's a couple of the shows that I end up going every year.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Interop being one of them.
Wow, that's the big leagues, man. That's not Kansas anymore. Let me tell you.
Yeah, it's Vegas, the worst place to go to.
Yeah, and is Interop still in the spring? Is that in May or so? I think that's
usually first week of May.
Yeah, my recollection is that's a spring show. Well, I'll tell you what. Here he comes. Here comes Joshua Liberman now. And hey, Mike Siggins, can you give us a wave? We're broadcasting over Northwest Digital News. Mike Siggins is the editor of Channel Pro, so I want to give you a chance in the sun. These gentlemen are a network that talks on business and tech topics out of the Northwest.
Guys, how you doing today? I'm kind of running between sessions right now, but best wishes to you, and thanks for a little shout out here.
No problem, and good show, man.
Thank you very much.
All right, there's that, man. Yeah, Joshua, our hostess with or our guest with the, it's not the hostess with the mostest.
I'm going to get you for that. All right.
So let's get you on camera. So here's the confidence monitor. Go ahead and scoot in just a little bit.
All right. I can't actually see. Oh, there I am.
And actually, we'll look up at that camera.
Good. Because I didn't want to look at that top of my head.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's much better. Thanks, Harry.
So, Kevin, how would you like to proceed? Maybe have Joshua introduce himself, and we'll jump into some security topics.
Yeah, if you would. Joshua, go ahead and introduce yourself. Give our viewers a little background on yourself, and then we'll get into talking about this outline you put together on securing your SMB client networks.
Okay. So, NetScience has been around 23 years. We started as an integrator Navarre and consulting firm. We migrated towards the MSP world, start in the mid-2000s, pretty much arrived in 2010, more or less. Still in something of a transition like so many other MSPs.
Yep.
I had a background that had nothing to do with IT. I studied physics, philosophy, and linguistics and languages in school. And I had a really good time at school. I figured out really early on that there were lots of women there. And so it took me 10 years to get 2 or 3 degrees and finally get out of school. And then I was really, really broke. I needed to do something about it. I took a job I didn't want, got out of debt, and here I am with NetSciences, which was incorporated in 1996.
And all of this in Albuquerque. How long have you lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico?
I passed through the first time in 77 and stopped leaving in 79. So just about 40 years.
Yeah, there we go.
So if you would, Joshua, you just walked off the stage moments ago. Share with us a little bit of what you were sharing with the audience there in your presentation you just gave.
Okay. Wow, that was spooky. I was wondering how you knew that. So what's going on here? So I guess the biggest point I want to drive home is that lots of us know what we need to do, or at least the majority of what we need to do to secure small networks. We don't necessarily know so much about how to get the buy-in from our clientele to let us do that. And there's a few tricks in there that is it's kind of a little bit like raising Siberian Huskies. First of all, you have to sneak up on them. You have to make them believe that that's not actually a vitamin pill. It's actually candy. And you also have to find a way to relate to them on their level. You really can't talk tech. And I'm sure everybody here realizes that you hear this all the time. You don't talk about technical problems, you talk about business solutions or business protection in our case.
Okay, if we could, thanks for that, Joshua. If we could, let's talk a little bit about your outline on securing your SMB client networks. There's a couple different places in there that just had some basic questions about but if there's anything in there in particular that you want to pull out, go ahead and do that.
Well, you have me at a disadvantage. I don't have access to that slide deck, so I'm going to go ahead and just respond to you
Kyle,
guys.
Kyle, if you could cherry pick a few of the slides, and we'll just go from there. The gentleman on our left, their right, he is an MSP from Southwest Washington. So we got a guy named Tim. So we got a ringer here.
Hi, Tim.
Hi.
Are you from Yakima or the Tri-Cities or something?
Longview, Washington.
So right between Seattle and Portland.
Okay, halfway up. All right. Well, have at it, guys. Just hit me up for those things.
All right. Well, then I'm looking at one of the slides titled "The Foundation." Talks about inner perimeter. Visit about that a little bit.
Okay. Can you bring that slide up by any chance so I can remember what's on this deck?
Yeah, we sure can.
That really helps.
Kyle, go ahead and scroll that up. It's slide
what
number
right
6.
there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you very much. So nothing here is breakthrough stuff. Everybody has read about this or done this or both. But you have to remember that you have to harden that OS or reduce the attack surface as much as you can.
An OS is an operating system. They have a B2B audience. So,
I'm sorry. I didn't realize who I was talking to.
Well, and it's fine. You just need to spell out acronyms.
So you have to make it tougher to penetrate the defenses of the operating system your business runs on. And the back in the SBS days when everything from security to Exchange to SQL, email, and everything else ran on that, it was really hard. But nowadays, a lot of times we really can narrow down those services that run and make it much easier to protect that machine. It's an extra step you have to do, and it sometimes is a bit iterative. You try something, tweak it a little bit, try again, tweak it a little more, and then do it. But that's a big step right there.
So that's sort of the outer, if you will, outer parameter.
No, that's the inner. That's inside.
Okay. And we're still on the inner parameter with DHCP. So what is DHCP, and why do we care?
All right. DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. But what it means is it assigns addresses, which for the non-technical folks is every machine needs something akin to a telephone number on it that's unique to allow them to communicate across the network. DHCP assigns that, and there are some tricks you can do with its design to turn on essentially a low-end version of Network Access Controller, NAC. Once all the machines are connected and you know how everything's going to work, you can toggle this so that you can't put a new machine on the network and get it an automatically assigned address.
Right.
It won't communicate. So people can't bring in a refrigerator that's already hacked that actually is going to go out there and perform a denial of service attack, or they can't bring in an access point and allow it to pick up an IP address. They can't do unauthorized things that can compromise the security of your network, even so that your MSP doesn't know what's going on. So this is a nice little filter between you and them.
Can you put that?
All right.
Very good. Tim had a question. I'm going to go back to slide number 6. So bring that back up there, Kyle, real quick, if you would. Tim had a question for you here on this slide.
Actually, more of a comment. There's the DHCP restrictions, and then there's the GPOs and all the login restrictions. What kind of stuff should we be concerned there with?
Well, depending on what you're protecting, what type of network, there are some areas, for example, in HIPAA compliant circles, you want to make sure that you restrict when and where and whom can log into any given machine. For example, you can't have generalized things like receptionist or front desk as a valid user and still meet HIPAA guidelines. You really have to identify the person. You have to be able to roll back and say who was logged in when and where. So one of the things you can do is create restrictions that allow any given user to only log in from any given or perhaps two different machines and within a range of times.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a common sense thing because you really don't have very often when somebody needs to connect at 2:30 a.m. to their machine. Now, a business owner might travel internationally like I do. There are exceptions to be made, but in general, there's a lot of restrictions you can design to restrict what machine or whether that machine that they're connecting to can be accessed during certain times and hours. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basics.
Yep.
So you're saying essentially you shouldn't be using a generic type login, but a login that's specific to an individual.
I think that's a good practice in general, especially if you ever want to do an incident response or an analysis after the fact that there is a breach or a penetration of another sort. You don't have a lot to work with if you don't have anything you can start with. If you don't know who was logged in at what time from where, you don't have much. Yeah. I mean, who is reception? That's not something you should do. So in general, yes, that's true. But then again, under certain regulatory regimes such as HIPAA, and I believe FINRA, we're not a FINRA authorized place, but I believe FINRA does the same thing. You want to have that opportunity to be sure you know who was who when.
Okay. Tim, did you have a follow-up on that?
Not on that one, but the next one is the internal vulnerability scans. Obviously, everybody has their favorite tools. What is your favorite tool when it comes to doing those?
So we're in a transition right now. The people I can name that come right to mind are Socksoder and Nodeware, which is actually a product of IGI, Indigo. So those products are specifically targeted at that. There's a third player in this market from the folks at Rapid Fire Tools. It's called Cyberhawk. That's an appliance, and it does far more than just IVS. But
And Rapid Fire Tools was here at the show. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, Rapid Fire was here. I don't think Socksoder was here
No,
today.
I didn't see the others.
Yeah,
but go on. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I interrupted you.
So there's two different things you're doing here. One is just what it sounds like. You're looking for unpatched vulnerabilities or vulnerabilities that aren't addressed by patches, whether that's duplicate admin accounts that are sitting there that shouldn't be, have admin capabilities. Somebody's elevated an account to admin that you don't know about, or even things that tombstoned or orphaned accounts that shouldn't be there. There's a wide range of things you can scan for as far as internal vulnerabilities. But another thing you can do, at least with two of those three products, is be alerted to when a new device is dropped on the network. And that is incredibly and increasingly important, especially in the world of the Idiot of Things, where everything is going to be.
We just did IoT on this show.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
Kevin, make a side note of that. I love that. We're going to borrow that one.
Yeah. Well,
Idiot of Things.
no offense, but we see the most amazing things. And I became a member of the Idiot of Things last year by bringing an internet radio, and I don't know if you've seen them, but they're really nifty. You can listen to radio stations all over the world. I slapped it in, and Vigilant, who was doing our perimeter scanning and firewall log reading, sent us an alert, and I found out that it was sending encrypted information back to a .cn domain, and I don't know what that information was, what it was, or if it was even all that threatening, but I disconnected that little Idiot of Things radio. We had a site that dropped in a refrigerator, and immediately that refrigerator became part of a DDoS attack. And a lot of these IoT devices are not designed securely, and worse than that, they're not designed so that you can ever patch them and render them secure once they're hacked. And that's a whole nother story.
Yep. Next slide, please, Kyle. Next slide, please.
Well, whatever you want to talk about.
Let's jump down to DNS filtering solutions, if you don't mind. This is slide number 11. The subtopics under this: distinct from content filtering, prevents malware and typo attacks, and consider deploying clients too.
Okay.
Elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah. So content filtering is typically delivered either built right into the firewall device or as a third-party NetNanian kind of software. So DNS filtering is not that. It's more like trying to prevent you from typo squatting attacks where you mistype a name and you hit a compromised page and there's an attack launched, or it prevents infections that require access to a CNC or command and control server in the cloud to launch, like a lot of ransomware and other attacks do. It's supposed to prevent stuff that's on your network already from getting out there and getting launched. So DNS filtering is a separate issue, but very, very valuable and can be done very inexpensively. And again, it protects against launching of malware, typo attacks, and other mistakes. The client I'm referring to is that some DNS filtering solutions also have a software client that can travel with a portable machine like a laptop, notebook machine, so that that business owner that travels all the time and really never attends the security briefings and doesn't really pay any attention because he's an attorney and he knows what you don't. It provides you a layer of insulation between his actions and his laptop, even if he's not sitting there behind the DNS server, the local DNS filtering that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Tim?
All right.
I don't have to.
Okay. What I wanted you to do, if you wouldn't mind, because security is actually a very common topic here. It gets mixed into many of the Tech Tuesdays that we do here on Northwest Digital News. For people that are following this stream today and, you know, they've heard a lot of conversation about security, maybe they haven't taken it as seriously as they need to. What advice would you give to them?
You know, examples, I fish around the web all the time for examples of folks that really stepped in it because they're not paying attention. I recognize that security fatigue is immensely common nowadays. I can't count the number of times I've addressed folks that just don't want to hear any more about it. And I don't want to hear any more about it. I'm so tired of reading about it. If you could imagine, I actually prefer political ads to security right now. That'll go away tomorrow. Well,
you don't have much choice. You're getting political ads, whether you want them or not.
So that's not actually true, but it's getting close. You have to get their attention. You have to talk to them about things that they can relate to. And I collect stories of folks that lost their businesses or had huge findings against them. And then I also talk to people about the confluence between a functional, capable, productive network and a secure network. There's nothing we do in terms of security that makes a network less stable. There are some compromises in usability, and that's an issue that you have to understand. And I draw pictures. I draw a nice, pretty little line. I put secure at one end of that line, and I put easy on the other end of the line. And I tell people you really can't fold the paper over onto each other, and you have to pick somewhere along that continuum between utterly secure and utterly easy. And you try to figure out what works for them, and you identify their pain points once you've secured their network. And I learned this the hard way. And you make sure that you address their pain points before they address their MSP.
Well, Joshua's being pretty modest about his accomplishments, and so I'm gonna brag on you a little bit. You carry the bag, you have the industry experience. Somewhere along the way, you raised your hand and you said, "I want to speak and I want to write." And so, in the current issue of Channel Pro, and I think you can see that on the camera, okay?
Yep.
If you go to page 8, this is the third of 4 installments from Joshua. And the article's on endpoint. So if you don't mind just maybe quickly summarizing your third installment on endpoint,
Okay.
Or if you want to read it real quick.
No, I don't want to read it. But I have to look at these because different publications in different places you speak have you structure these things differently. I know what's in my head, but I know what's on these pages.
Right.
So I was talking about protecting of endpoints in the sense of desktops and laptops and portable devices in this particular article. So we talked a lot about the basics like patching and anti-malware and how we're slowly migrating away from signature-based anti-malware to more behavioral and more machine learning type solutions.
Machine learning, yeah.
Such as Cylance and SentinelOne and others people have heard about there. Then mobile device management, which is a huge hole in our portfolio. It's very hard to get people to understand that their telephone has more power than we landed on the moon with. Hardening remote access, which is two-factor authentication and other issues. Full disk encryption whenever we can get away with it, and how to manage that. Endpoint device discovery, which is related to the internal device discovery we talked about earlier. And even things that people don't think about as endpoints, such as VoIP phones or cleaning up after yourself. I mean, do you have access to your ILOs, your RMMs built into your servers open so you can service them from anywhere if the server won't boot? Because if you do, anybody can service them from anywhere and make sure the server won't boot. Just cleaning up after yourself. Make sure you don't create service admin accounts that you don't need anymore. Or like one of my techs once did, create a service admin account and use a 6-digit alpha only password. You have to watch your own work all the time. So this article is about the details that we all think about and some of the ones that we don't.
And Kyle, if you want to put it in, it's channelpronetwork.com. Channelpronetwork.com. You're welcome to subscribe to the magazine, or they'll give you a peek at some of these articles in front of the paywall. Joshua, I'll tell you, we're probably starting to wrap on this episode, so I want to change the subject. Let's go back to business. You've started, you've owned and operated a successful MSP technology practice in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And like so many of us, when you get to a certain trajectory or plane with your business, it frees up your time, right? You've got the workflow nailed. You have staff that does a lot of the day-to-day work. And so I don't know if you're comfortable sharing publicly what we've talked about privately, but you want to do more writing, you want to do more speaking, people may start to see more of you. So if you don't mind, because this is actually a business network where we weave tech in. So let's go back to business. What's your future?
Well, I guess my off-ramp involves a combination of speaking more, writing more, and enjoying myself more of the time, maybe wrestling a little bit less with alligators and mud, with pigs, and having a little more fun at the other end of it. To quote Carl Palachuk, I have a tendency to run my business by remote control, which has taken years and years to get working well. And honestly, what I do nowadays is solve problems, bring in customers, and sign checks for the most part. And building that sort of structure that underpins me has been something I've spent about 8 to 10 years at, and I still work on almost every day. Ultimately, I hope to be in a position of so many others when you see them up on stage. For example, I doubt you've ever been to an IT show where a guy gets up there and he says, well, I'm an MSP now. I used to work for one of these vendors. Talking to MSPs, I decided it was so cool I had to become an MSP. I haven't actually seen that happen. Mostly it goes the other way. You see people who are MSPs who are now either stumping for somebody like Datto or others, or they're out there talking about their experiences and how to help, give you that pathway so that someday you can be on stage talking about your experiences.
Yep. And Tim, I think you resemble parts of this storytelling in terms of the business maturity continuum. If I'm correct, you have business activity in the Phoenix area as well as Southwest Washington. Is that what I recall from one of our conversations?
You're correct. Yeah, I have. My family lives in Phoenix now, and I work here in Washington and in Phoenix, and mostly just run the business.
Are you smart enough to not work in Phoenix in the summer and not work in Washington in the winter? Or?
He's been trying to do that.
Trying to do both.
So I missed the intro. Of course, I came in late. What's the name of your business?
Sutinen Computers.
Spell that for me.
That's my last name, Sutinen, Sutinen.
Sutinen.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Norwegian or Danish?
Finnish. Close.
Finnish. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything. Okay. that is a hard language, buddy. And you're lucky you were born speaking it.
He's got a vehicle with the company wrap on the outside of it.
Uh-huh.
You did that with Net Sciences, right?
We have a wrap
car. You've got
car.
The branding, a wrap card, that kind of thing. And then I keep kind of nudging Tim to drive on up on the third Thursday to the good old-fashioned Puget Sound Small Business Server Partner Group at Microsoft Lincoln Square in Bellevue. Tim, we're gonna get you. I'm gonna keep bugging you.
Tim,
I'll come there one of these days. I can't wait. I read your first book, or one of the very first SMB Small Business Server books back in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
I read that too. That's actually how I met Harry. So I want to leave you with a free thought, a new way to close. You can tell your folks it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Okay. That's right. There you go.
All right. Well, hey,
thank you.
Just got off stage. Totally appreciate your energy and time.
Okay, guys.
And
thanks for having.
Kevin, Kyle, Tim, any final parting thoughts, my friends, till we talk next Tuesday?
Well, appreciate you bringing Joshua on. That was a lot of great stuff that he had to share. So special thanks for our viewing audience who's joined us on Twitch TV, on Patreon, on YouTube, and of course our Facebook pages. Thanks to all of you and our guests seated left to right on the screen: Joshua Liberman, Harry Brelsford, Tim Sutinen, Kevin Hunter, and Kyle Torgeson. Thanks everybody who joined us here on Tech Tuesday. Till next time.
All right, vote.